you so much for your time. I was on the scene shortly after both the thing of Renee did and Alex Pretti. And what struck me was the number of faith leaders who ran towards that danger. What role does the church and the faith leaders have in this grieving process, in this healing process?
Well, first of all, I want to say how inspired I am by the people of Minneapolis who are standing up in this moral moment in which the very identity of our country is on the line. Those faith leaders showed up because they believe, as I do, that there's something called the ministry of presence. That sometimes showing up is its own power. And they know that what is happening with immigrant communities concerns all of us. And that clearly was the feeling of Ms. Renee Good and Alex Pretti. They literally put their bodies on the line in the best of the civil rights tradition. I'm pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church, where Dr. King served. And sometimes there's great power in showing up, literally putting your bodies in the struggle. And the people of Minnesota are doing that today. And I think they're standing up not only for Minnesota, but they're standing up for the whole country, because sadly, the Trump-Vance regime intends to take this tragic and destructive show on the road.
I know you just met with faith leaders here in the area. What was that meeting about, and how are they supporting the community here?
It was very powerful and very humbling for me to be there with them, because they're here every day dealing with this. They have seen this up close. And while I am a senator from Georgia, I thought me showing up here today was the least I could do, and I also think it's central to my work. Again, I will vote this week as a senator on funding, and I intend to block funding for ICE this week. We've got to put some guardrails on this operation.
You talked about the plan to block funding for ICE. Is there anything that could change your mind, whether it's more body cams, whether it's officers removing masks? Is there anything that can change?
Well, they certainly need to remove the masks, but we're discussing these things in the Democratic caucus right now. But this breaking of basic constitutional rights, the lawlessness, the recklessness with which they are taking human lives, Americans all over the country are standing up on both sides of the aisle. There's something about the atrocities that we are witnessing on camera that shock the conscience. And as a democratic republic, they are doing these things in our name. And the people are standing up in this town and all across the country saying not in our name.
And if those concessions are made, if the masks are removed, if the body cams turn on, will you reconsider?
Well, we'll have some conversation. Look, I know that we won't get everything we want, but there's some basic things that need to happen. And I might point out also that even as we stand up to block ICE funding this week, the sad reality is that when they pass the one big ugly bill, as I call it, they supersize the funding on this organization. ICE is now larger funding than all of the other federal law enforcement agencies combined. That includes the FBI, the U.S. Marshal Service, the Bureau of Prisons, the DEA. And so when you build a beast that big, it's got to eat. And this beast is literally consuming bodies all across this country, the undocumented and the documented, non-citizens and citizens alike. As Dr. King said, we're tired of the single garment of destiny. And so we've got a larger play that we've got to make. We've got to deal with this. I'm worried that we're going to see more of this all across our country if we don't stand up in this movement.
Given those tens of billions of dollars additional funding to ICE over the 4-year period from the bill, is it a moot point to block?
No, it's not a moot point. It is the beginning of a conversation. And I think it's important for Americans to understand that even if this isn't happening in your city right now, it's costing you something. Because in that same bill where they gave ICE tens of billions of dollars, made it this oversized beast that's literally consuming American bodies, knocked 15 million Americans off of their health care. So you can't afford your health care. You're struggling to get food assistance if you're the working poor. Meanwhile, you have unmasked men in your neighborhoods literally kidnapping 5-year-olds and killing people with them.
And do you have any concerns about blocking the funding, potentially impacting the DSA or other?
All of this, of course I don't, there are things that we need government to do. But what gives me hope is that people across the spectrum standing up in this moment. And if my Republican colleagues are listening to their own constituents, I think they're hearing some of the same things I'm hearing. And I hope that we can remember who we are as American people. This is the opposite of democracy. There's no important right than the right to be able to walk down the street and stay alive and not have to convince people that you have a right to exist.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming. We're going to do just a couple Q&A. The senator is going to start us off with just a few brief remarks just for media about why he's here today. I know there's a lot of folks here. We're not going to be able to take questions from everyone, but just 3 to 4 questions. So, Senator, can you just start things
Sure.
off?
Thank you all so very much. I thought it was important for me to be here in this community as I stand where Alex Pretti lost his life in a real sense. I feel like I'm standing on holy ground. And the blood spilled on this ground reminds us that we're in a moral moment in our country. And the soul of our nation is at stake. I am a United States Senator, and so I'm committed to blocking funding for ICE. I'll deal with that later this week as I make my way back to Washington. But as a pastor, I just wanted to be present with the people of Minneapolis who are standing up in such a courageous way. They're standing with their neighbors. I think of Renee Good, who literally put her body on the line and paid the ultimate price. Alex Pretti the same. And all of us in their memory are called to stand up in this moment and summon the better angels of our natures, as Lincoln called it, and say no to this evil that is being unleashed onto our streets. I think even the people who voted for Donald Trump did not sign up for this. And I'm inspired by the fact that Americans all over the country are standing up and saying no. And I'm going to do everything I can as a senator to block ICE funding this week and to drag these folks before Congress and to hold them accountable for the mayhem and death that we're seeing on the streets.
We're going to go first to Telemundo right here.
Senator, what do you think about Greg Bobino leaving the city? Do you think it's the right thing to do?
Do I think about what? I'm sorry.
About Greg Bobino leaving the city, the commander of the...
Well, I think that it's the policy that's the problem. And it won't help us if the policy doesn't change. So I'm paying attention to that, but I'm more interested in seeing what will happen in the days ahead.
Some women will make a
Please say your
difference
name
by
and outlet.
being here. I said what they did with CBP. Do you think the fact that some women is coming here is kind of taking over? Do you think it will make a difference?
I think what's making a difference is the people of this community who are standing up and are saying, no, this is not who we are as Americans. And their voices are making an impact, which is why we're seeing a change in tone. But we can't let up. We will continue to hold the administration accountable for these atrocities. We're seeing masked men jumping out of unmarked cars, creating terror and havoc and death in these communities. And the question that Americans who are watching ought to ask themselves is, do you actually think Minnesota is safer now as a result of this? This was clearly not about law enforcement. We saw that this weekend when Pam Bondi said, if you want ICE out of here, hand over your voting rolls. That's the opposite of democracy. It tells us what's really at stake here, and this cannot stand.
Senator,
I spoke to.
Milwaukee.
Hold on, one at a time. Who am I talking to?
The ABC station in Milwaukee. I'm curious your thoughts when you hear people like Senator Johnson say this is all the fault of Democrats and Democratic policies, and he's going to do everything to ensure DHS is funded in Congress.
They're trying to tell Americans not to believe their lying eyes. We can see. And they ought to show a little decency and respect for two American citizens who have lost their lives. But I think ordinary people are looking at this and they know in their heart of hearts that this is not right.
Last
They know
question.
it.
Senator Jose Pellier noticed.
Last
This
question,
morning
your time.
I spoke to two women who work at a hotel. They tell me they're afraid to go to work, they're afraid to go to church, and working at a hotel, they've been forced to clean the rooms of the very agents who they are afraid of. What is your message to people like them who are afraid to live their lives here?
Look, this is a sad story that we see all the time. It is exacerbated and brought into sharper focus by this tragedy. But you're talking about essential workers who stand up for us all the time, who work in hotels, who clean up hospitals in the middle of the night, who stock grocery store shelves. And a lot of those people come from immigrant communities, and they are being poorly treated. And not only is it immoral, I might say when you think about what all of this is doing to this economy and to the American economy, it's stupid.
Last question, New York
Thank you,
Times.
sir.
Senator,
Very quick.
Minnesota state officials in the courts and elsewhere are pushing right now to try and get federal law enforcement to cooperate with the investigation, state investigation into Alex Pretti's killing. Do you think Congress has any role to play?
I'm sorry, what is, say the question again?
Sure. So state officials are suing right now to try and get federal law enforcement to cooperate in the state investigation, joint state-federal investigation into Alex Pretti's killing. So far, they have denied that, refused to share evidence. Do you think Congress has any role to play in facilitating
I'm going to use
that?
all the levers that I have available to me as a member of the Senate to hold these officials accountable. You'll see me drag them in front of Congress, ask them the tough questions, and to hold them accountable. I hope my Republican colleagues will recognize that they don't work for Donald Trump, they work for the people who elected them, and they too will ask those tough questions and not give over the power of oversight, which is what Congress has, and the power of the purse. And I intend to use all of those tools as we engage this issue.
That's a wrap for us.
Thank you,
all
Senator.
very
Thank
much.
you.